we're just going to open it up for question and answer session. So you guys can really just ask them any questions that you have. I will be recording this for our purposes. We'll post it on our YouTube and post it on our website. We also have a whole bunch of questionnaires filled out by different candidates, city council, county commissioner, and our mayoral races as well. So those will be posted today on our website as well. So watch for those if you want to learn more about our candidates. Before we get started, I'll let Jovy, you jumped on first, so we'll let you start with your 5 minutes. And then Scott, you'll follow, and then we'll just let everybody open up for a question and answer after that.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Christy. Thank you everyone for being here today. And thank you to the Chamber for hosting. Really glad to be here. Just a little bit about me, for those of you who don't know me. I am a local artist. That is what I do by trade, and I've been doing that for around 8 years. I do have a small brick and mortar downtown where my studio and a art gallery where I curate work from other artists is located. And that's been open for 2 years now. I have lived in Winona for almost 12 years. And during that time, I have spent a lot of time working on a variety of different kinds of committees, generally surrounding the arts and arts organization and event organization, because that's often where my heart lies. And, through that experience, I have just really had such a great opportunity to connect with so many people in the community. I've worked for a lot of local businesses in a variety of industries, including retail and sales, the food service industry, and even manufacturing. So I've definitely gotten a very broad taste in my time here in Winona, working at a lot of different jobs and just really affording me the opportunity to gain a lot of perspective in these industries. And I'm running because through that time and through the time that I've been here, I have always felt like Winona was on the verge of something just really different and really progressive. And, when I first moved here, I really felt that for a number of years. And then really the last few years that felt much more tangible, especially in our downtown area. That is one place that I really feel like becomes the heartbeat of a city and is where we can really show ourselves off to visitors and to our locals alike. Those last few years of progress, with the levee renovation and more businesses kind of popping up in downtown and just a lot more focus and efforts. And I've attended a number of meetings through Main Street's program, things that the city has done to just kind of spearhead what that direction is going to look like for the future. And I wanted to be a bigger part of that planning process, and not just a community voice, and not just a business owner. So a couple of years ago, I had considered running for council. And at the time I was opening my gallery and went to candidate school, actually hosted by the Chamber. And I was there with another friend of mine who was also thinking about running. And through that process, just kind of talking more about it, I decided that I was not going to run at the time and that I would help my friend run, which gave me a little bit of a taste of what a local election would look like, on a little bit smaller level because she was running in a Ward 2, and that was Eileen Moeller. And, but again, it just kind of gave me this different experience, different perspective of what it might look like to run in a local election. After that, I had decided, or started kind of thinking about the idea of running for mayor. And people say, well, why mayor? And I see the position of mayor as being this person who serves as a convener and as someone who can really reach out to the community in a different way and maybe a broader way, and not only like community members, but to businesses, to students, and just really be this voice of opportunity and collaboration and partnership. And, people say a lot that I have these very big ideas, and I have very big ideas, but that is what I see the role as being, as someone who can start kind of creating a convergence around that so that we can maybe implement some of the things that I see would be really beneficial for our city. Where I might lack an experience, I really can shine at learning and at grit and asking the right questions. I'm not afraid to say what I don't know. And I do a lot of work and put in a lot of effort to figure out what I don't know, and to ask questions and really figure out the process. And this campaign has been really incredible. It's been very fulfilling. And I have learned a lot, even though I've kept my finger on the pulse of what's been happening civically for the entire time that I've been here. I've learned so much more, and I'm sure that that will continue to happen. But just the opportunity to run for this position has been really great, and has just connected me with even more deep-rooted relationships with people in this community that I don't think that I may have had otherwise. So I really appreciate that. But yes, I will. I think that's everything.
Thanks, Jovy. We'll let Scott go next, and then we'll just open it up for questions later.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I have to preface these meetings because I got a 2-year-old and a 9-month-old that are not up yet and will be soon. So we might have some noise, and I'll shift into a different room once they get up. But I appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. A little bit about myself. I came here to Winona State in 1992. I had moved here from Eagan originally. After school, I moved back up to the Twin Cities for 8 years and was pulled back to Winona, primarily because it's a phenomenal town. Beauty, outdoor recreation opportunities, the people, just a community that I had fallen in love with when I went to school here. I also own a couple small businesses. One of them is Trinona. My wife and I have owned Trinona now for, I think, about almost 4 years. We did not have Trinona this year. We'll end up having it again next year. Hopefully, we're still working on dates for that. But I also own a small business. Primarily, my work history has primarily been in the bicycle industry. I worked in bike shops for many years, and I moved up through different levels, distribution, and then also sales for manufacturers. And I own a sales rep agency, which actually failed a few years ago. So I've been through, it's one of those things that you see all the time. You never know, you never know failure, or you never know change until you see failure. Or, when a business is failing, it's not something that's easy to grasp onto at the time and try to understand how you can change it immediately. But I had the opportunity to change my business essentially. So I still own the same business. It's called Integrity Outdoor. Like I said, I was a sales rep for 17 states. I had 2 employees, sales sub reps that were out working for me. And my primary vendor claimed bankruptcy, which was a bicycle company. At the time, I was trying to make it work, and it wasn't working. I kept going into bike shops, and they kept telling me, you guys claim bankruptcy. We'll take a couple bikes, but we're not going to take 20, And basically, I watched my income dwindle down to, very little. It was about 1/10 of what it was originally. And I made the decision to pull back off the road because that was most of my overhead. And what that did is that gave me the opportunity to start looking at how I could increase profit, reduce overhead, and stay home more. I was on the road for about 150 nights a year for many years. Gave me the opportunity to stay home more. And what I ended up doing is I am now an IT support consultant for fitness companies. So basically, I tell people what buttons to push on their phone all day. I handle that worldwide for a fitness company. but it was a learning experience for me to go through that business failure and try to find out what suited me, my lifestyle, and then also what suited our income needs for as a family. Um, so I've been through that. In regards to the political campaign and running for mayor, um, I've been very involved civically at the city and county level for almost 15 years now here in Winona. I started my primary wheelhouse or niche has been outdoor recreation. Working on the Bluff Traverse Trail system that's one of my baby projects. Um, I've been working on a few other things as well, but what ended up happening is that kind of transferred into things like street infrastructure design. I started going to planning meetings, city council meetings, and then um, about 6 or 7 years ago, I think I sat with some of you on the active living committee at Live Well, and Janica Sobek was still executive director at Live Well Winona at the time, and she had invited me to go to the Blandon Leadership Program, which at the time for me was a pie in the sky type thing. It was a spam email, basically, is what I had thought it was. The invitation to apply to Blandon looked like it was too good to be true, so I deleted it. And Janica hit me up a few days later and she said, "Scott, I don't see your application." And I said, "Oh, I thought that was junk," because they tell you you get a free week of this great leadership training at this luxury resort and free food. And I'm like, "Oh, baloney," click, And anyways, I ended up applying and going to that in 2015. If you're not familiar with that, I know there are some Blandonites here today, but if you're not familiar, yep, Scott Olson is. But if you're not familiar with it, what it is it's a week-long rural leadership training program. It's only for smaller communities in Minnesota. And they take 25 people in a cohort, all different walks of life, all different economic backgrounds, professional backgrounds, all different personality types. And what they do is they train you to work with these other people to be able to listen, absorb their opinions, and try to really understand not only them, but also yourself and how you're able to really be able to work with someone regardless of what their opinions or work methods are. Few years ago, I was starting to get approached after I came back from Blandon. People were asking me if I would potentially run for office at some point. I also was looking at Ward 2, but Eileen was running and I liked what I heard from Eileen, so I wasn't going to run against her. Mark and I had had conversations in the past few years here. And when he told me that he was stepping down, then my wife and I decided that it was time to do this. So it has been a learning experience running for mayor. I'm sure Jovy can say the same. But I have put in a lot of time down at City Hall the last 2 years. I've been at every city council meeting, every planning commission, every pre-council meeting. I've missed a few here and there, but I've really put in the time to learn how the city works, the processes, and every single commission meeting I can hit since I filed. So I think it's Jovy's been at a lot of them too. I'd say we've probably been at least 100 commission meetings since we've filed. So it has been a learning experience, and it's been pretty fun. It's been neat learning about Winona. So thank you for having me again.
Thanks, Scott. I'm going to kick it off with my first question. Selfishly, I would like to know from each of you, and we'll start with you, Jovy. What do you feel as a mayor your relationship will be with the chamber?
I expect it to be a really good working relationship. Honestly, I see the chamber as just being this really important partner for the city. When we talk about businesses and courting new business to Winona and helping individual entrepreneurs start new endeavors. I feel like you will have a lot of resources to offer and experience, of course, and networking opportunities and throughout this campaign, I've spoken a lot about, the importance of partnerships and collaboration, and I really see the Chamber as being a very important partner.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, Chamber, Visitors Bureau, nonprofits, these are all important parts of any community. And the city, as mayor, you have the ability to be a figurehead or a voice for Winona to a certain degree, to be able to be an informed voice or to be able to convey messages that will help the community as a whole. You have to be able to work with the Chamber. It is an important part of the economic development of our city. Right now you could look at the CARES Act funding that's coming down through the Chamber. That's a great example of how government and an institution like the Chamber of Commerce can work together to try and get things done for the community. So I would be more than happy to, if I were elected mayor, to be participate and be able to have conversations on a regular basis, and be able to work with the Chamber extensively and frequently. To be honest, I do expect that to happen. So.
All right, I'll open it up for other questions. And I won't be on the Zoom much longer. I have another obligation with Minnesota State Southeast and Chancellor Malhotra, but Amanda will be taking over once I step away here. But any questions? Yes, Scott.
So, hi, good morning. I work at Winona State. I'm Scott Olson. So one of the differences, I think, between owning a small business and helping lead a city through governance is that in a small business, I think you would have a lot of your own ability just to make a decision and go with it. Whereas in governance, you have to build consensus around things. And it seems lately like our city council has a lot of one vote margin decisions. So my question for you is, what would you do to build consensus around your vision for Winona?
That is a great question, Scott. The way I see consensus building is really through effective communication. It has to start with really good conversations about why this is a vision and maybe opportunities on how, and having really viable examples. In my questionnaire, it was asked about, what is the vision, your vision for Winona? And personally, my vision is just a really viable downtown that is coupled with a consistent tourism, with this existing industry of manufacturing and business and entrepreneurship that we have here in Winona that's really strong. And especially for someone like you, for the university, is just making Winona a very attractive place for students to want to come and hopefully to stay. I think a lot about retaining talent, but again, going back to your question, building consensus really has, again, it has to be effective communication. And I think it's a lot of conversations and really empowering those to be a part of that conversation and hearing their concerns about things, and then being able to answer questions about what that vision is.
Scott, that is a good question. Have you been thinking about that one for a while? You're exactly right. Small business, you're able to make that decision and make those changes immediately, and that is generally a trait or a character of a CEO, being able to make decisions on the fly, whether they're right or wrong. But making a timely decision a lot of times is crucial for a small business. In terms of the You're very right. When I first started going to council meetings a few years ago, I saw a lot of 7-0 votes on stuff where everybody was in agreement. I'll be honest, I didn't start seeing split votes until campaign season. And I do believe that some of that was, basically it's Al, George, and Michelle that have been voting against some projects. Broadway Road Diet is one specifically. They tried pulling it out of the budget when they went through the preliminary budget here. The landscape of the council might change after this election. It could move to a more conservative vote. I think Jovy and I are both progressive compared to Michelle, let's say, or Ted. That will keep a, depending on how the election pans out, I would say it's probably going to keep a 4-3 progressive, depending on which city council members are voted in. But I think we'll continue to see some of that. I think the biggest thing, and something that I've talked with some of the council members about in regards to these split votes recently, there seems to be a lot of public uproar about, so let's just use Broadway Road Diet as an example. A lot of public uproar about that. And the reason for it, I think, is misinformation. People who are against it don't necessarily, either they're underinformed or they're misinformed on that stuff. In terms of being able to work with the council, and I've had some candidates and also council members call me and talk to me about this, but we look forward to working with each other. I think it's important to understand, to have that mutual understanding that regardless at the end of the day, whether we agree on something or not, that we can still work together. If you look at the state and national level right now, and I'm getting a little long in this, I apologize, but I have a friend who's a education lobbyist at the state. And he told me this, that he's been there over 20 years up at the Capitol working on education lobbying. He essentially said 4 years, Republican, Democrat, they both be in front of the camera, they give their lip service based on what their party was doing. As soon as the cameras were off, they'd go into the conference room and they'd work out a deal. In the last year or so, that has completely stopped. The divisiveness, the kind of the posturing from each party, and you could bring that down to the city level as well. There are conservatives and progressives on that council. That posturing is something that I think has happened recently because of the political campaign at large in our nation right now. Whoever's in, whether it's Jovy or I, whichever council members get in, it's going to be important that they're able to work together, that they're able to communicate, that they're able to come to a mutual understanding and respect of each other's opinions. So once a vote is done, you move on. Your vote is your opinion. But once that's done, you got to be able to move on from that. And I think that is a crucial part, especially at the municipal level, being able to move projects forward and or being able to make sure that programming or funding is happening for certain things in the community. Regardless if you disagree on them, you have to be able to make that vote, move on, and understand that the other people, their opinions are just as important as yours, so that you do have that mutual understanding, can continue to work together without that communication breakdown that could potentially happen.
Wonderful, thank you guys. Are there any other questions out there for the candidates? No, anybody? Yep, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, the issue I wanted to bring up today, which is it's a conversation the nation's having about racial justice. And I've heard Jovy weigh in on her thoughts, and I've heard her comments on this. But particularly, I'd like to know Scott's stance on race in our community, and just hear him publicly state his thoughts on that. And one thing that he knows that I'm particularly upset is the endorsement by a Winona woman whose business is creating All Lives Matter signs. So if he could speak to that and just tell us his ideas on that and his beliefs.
You bet. So I could give some background on this, but a lot of Jovy supporters have been popping in on my Mayoral page, and they've been making comments trying to drag me out into public and in many different ways here. Not, to be honest, I've responded to every single comment that's been made, and we decided early on in my campaign that any comments that came into me that were not, I would say, directly supportive of my campaign, where they're like, yeah, vote for Scott, go Scott. What I've done is I've reached out, even if it's a pothole question or whatever, I've reached out to those people personally. I private messaged them. Katie, I private messaged you as well. I've invited all of those people to give me a call so that we can really discuss it, because I don't feel that comments on a social media page are necessarily beneficial. They tend to get sideways pretty quick. I've seen it on Jovy's Mayoral page. I've seen it on mine, you name it. The COVID-19 page the city has. We've all seen it. The posts, the daily news comments, things go sideways pretty fast on social media. In terms of where I purchased my yard signs, at the beginning of my campaign, I had one of my campaign team members, Mandy, now Hansel, is Mandy Weiland. She runs the local trail running series. She had mentioned that they got their signs at a local company, because I had looked at Vistaprint, where I believe Jovy got hers. I also looked at a place in Iowa, a place up in the Twin Cities, and I was like, oh, local company, female owned, awesome. I'm going to buy my signs there. And I did. And Terry, the owner of Winona Sign and Design, basically was excited that I was supporting a local business, and that has been one of my platforms, is, support local business, especially during COVID. I think it's crucial that people stop clicking the Amazon button. I've got a neighbor, she's got 7 Amazon packages on her front door every day. And that's not supporting local businesses. That's not keeping money within our own local economy. Katie, you want to hear it? All lives don't matter until Black lives matter. And I will say that publicly, anytime, whenever you like. It is, unfortunately, what has happened during this campaign, because I'm the white male, people have automatically assumed that I am things that I am not. And people who know me do understand who I am. They understand that I am against racial injustice, systemic racism. I will do my very best to try and, I can't end it as a mayor. I can't end it in the next 4 years. It's not going to happen. But what I can do is recognize the types of things that create inequality for anybody. It's not okay to be able to it's okay to hold your own opinions, but it's not okay to allow it to continue. I've done my best to try and grasp who I am as a white male. When I first filed for candidacy, the biggest thing, COVID, budget shortfalls. I was looking at fiscal issues that I thought I was going to have to talk about. George Floyd happened and things blew up. And, you know, I'm from the Twin Cities. I've seen, I know that area where the riots were happening really well. You know, I saw a lot of my own friends up there living in a world that had turned upside down. That is nothing compared to the racial injustice that's happened ever since the beginning of man, of humans. It is something that's near and dear to me. I have not experienced that because I'm a white male, but that doesn't mean that I'm not able to work towards solutions or to help mitigate the issues that fall into even our small community in terms of racial injustice, racial bias, you know, LGBTQ plus, BIPOC, you name it. I mean, you know, I'm not here, which unfortunately a lot of people think I am, because Michelle's out of the race. All of a sudden, Scott's the evil white man running for office here. That's been frustrating for me and hard because I'm not that person. The people that know me know that I'm not that person. It unfortunately has turned into this weird side, you know, part of our race, and it's been frustrating for me. But I've done my very best to reach out to everyone. Katie, call me. Let's talk about it. Teach me. Help me learn. You know, I'm not here to shut down anyone's opinion ever. I'm here to absorb and learn and understand why people have those opinions and why or how their experiences created those opinions for them. So,
Scott, can you understand why I wanted you to publicly say it?
I can, and you know, I'll be honest. I was trying to. I've made many attempts to try and get that out in the appropriate forums. You know, one of the forums is the Winona Racial Injustice Coalition page. I've applied to that twice to try and become a member, and I've been turned down twice. I mean, that's I tried, you know. I had Amanda Headland reached out to me, said, Scott, there's a storm brewing. You need to jump in there and say something. And I have something prepared, ready to go. Amanda was going to help me post that, and Amanda got attacked for defending me. It's unfortunate. I have friends that if they say anything in support of me, it turns into this storm on social media. And it's not something that I've been public about, but it's not something that's been easy on me or my friends. And so we have taken the stance, if anything's said, don't reply. It's just, you know, why start a storm when, you know, I'm not that person. So that is why we have made the choice as a campaign committee. It's a group think tank. You know, there's about 8 of us that work on this, and we make individual decisions on every single comment that comes into us. We're like, do we reply? You know, I've PM'd everyone trying to start a conversation, but you know, and I've made efforts to make a public statement because I know that thought process is out there that I'm, you know, this horrible person. And I've done my best to try and quell that in the appropriate forums. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I do see that Senator Miller has joined us, so I am going to ask if he has anything he'd like to say before we continue on with the question and answer with the mayoral candidates. Maybe. Senator Miller, are you there? Ha, he is.
I am sorry, I'm at work. I'm trying to
That's okay.
balance a few different things here. Good morning. What I'm not sure what do you want me to? I was asked to be on. I'm happy to be here. You just want me to give some comments or what?
Yeah, just if you want to talk a little bit about yourself, and I know because you are up for re-election this term also, so we just wanted to give you the same platform as the mayoral candidates. We did invite Sarah, as Christy had said in the beginning, you weren't here. She wasn't able to join us today. So we were focusing mainly on the mayoral candidates, but we're happy to hear that you were able to join us. So we also wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to the crowd here about yourself and your campaign.
Sure. Well, thank you, Amanda. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeremy Miller. I was born and raised right here in Winona, and been married to my beautiful wife, Janelle, for 11 years now. We have 3 boys. Drew is 8 years old and 8.5, otherwise he gets mad at me. And the twins are, Luke and Tom, are 7 years old. I'm involved in our 4th generation family business, Miller Scrap, here in Winona. And then also Janelle and I have a couple small businesses that we run on the side as entrepreneurs. I've been serving in the Minnesota Senate since being elected in 2010. In 2010, I was the 2nd youngest Minnesotan elected to the Minnesota Senate. And in 2019, I was the youngest member of the Senate to become president of the Senate. Some of the things that I've worked on and some of the things that I'm doing, my focus is to listen and work together with the people of southeastern Minnesota to get good things done for our district and the entire state of Minnesota. And as I travel the district and visit with constituents, people continue to share their frustration with the polarization of extreme party politics, especially attempts to mislead voters with false information. As I mentioned, I've been doing this for 10 years now, and it seems like it gets worse. It gets more polarizing each and every year, especially as we approach an election. My approach is very, very different. My philosophy, even more simple: listen to the people and work together to get things done. During my time in the Senate, this approach has worked very, very well. We've accomplished many good things for our district and the entire state of Minnesota. We've made healthcare more affordable. We've focused on job growth and economic development initiatives. We made record investments in education, including early childhood learning programs and special education programs. We increased funding for nursing homes, mental health services, disability services. I've also had the opportunity to work with local constituents on some major infrastructure projects for southeastern Minnesota, including Education Village, the Lanesboro Dam, Southeast Minnesota Veterans Cemetery. We secured state funding for a new veterans home in southeastern Minnesota. That veterans home is still awaiting federal funds before that project starts. And we've also gotten done several major road and bridge projects, and there are more in the pipeline. Just a mention, next week, MnDOT is having an open house on the roundabouts proposals. I've been hearing from a lot of constituents at the doors here at the scrapyard concerns about the proposal, or Winona residents want to hear more from MnDOT. So there is a public Zoom meeting next week. I hope folks who are interested in that are able to attend. Just last week, the Senate passed the largest bonding bill in our state's history, passed on a strong bipartisan vote in the Senate, 64-3. This bill focused on core infrastructure projects, roads and bridges, water and sewer infrastructure upgrades, asset preservation and building upgrades on our college and university campuses. And it also included something that folks at the chamber have been pushing for a long time, Section 179 conformity to provide significant tax relief to small businesses and farmers. One of the most important issues that we're all dealing with right now is the COVID pandemic. And when COVID hit, I was able to get to work right away on bipartisan solutions to help keep Minnesotans safe. One of my roles as president of the Senate was to help guide the Senate's emergency response effort to provide funding for hospitals, clinics, nursing homes, and healthcare providers to make sure that they had the equipment and the tools that they needed to help keep all of us safe. Additionally, while I wasn't involved in the beginning, when discussions broke down, I did get involved on ensuring proper work safe protections for our first responders, our healthcare workers, and others on the front line of the COVID pandemic. And I was very proud of those bipartisan efforts to get that done. I mentioned this in the beginning, one of the most frustrating things as we approach an election is the negativity that comes with not running a campaign, but being a candidate for public office. And we've taken the approach, I've taken the approach to stay positive, stay focused on the facts, and again, continue to work together with people and focus on getting things done. And unfortunately, my opponent has doubled down on efforts to mislead voters with false information. And just yesterday, as I was preparing for this, I had to make a list. Just in the last couple of weeks, I'm going to read this list, just because I think it's important that people know the truth and know the facts. So my opponent and some of her supporters said that I don't support education funding. That's completely false. The last several budgets in the state of Minnesota had significant increases for education. The last bipartisan budget that was passed was a Democrat House of Representatives, a Republican Senate, and a Democrat governor. Record investments in education, including more funding for early childhood learning and special education cross subsidy payments, which was incredibly important to many districts across the state, but especially Winona Area Public Schools and La Crescent Hoka Public Schools. There was another statement that I don't support vulnerable Minnesotans. This couldn't be further from the truth. This is actually one of my priorities in the Senate. We increased funding for disability service providers. We've increased funding for mental health services. As chair of the Senate Jobs Committee, I increased funding to the Extended Employment Program, which provides job opportunities to people with disabilities. Organizations like the Winona ORC benefit from that. We passed $28 million in funding for new community behavior health crisis centers across the state to provide mental health services. And we also increased funding for nursing homes. At a recent candidate forum, my opponent said that I voted no on the Winona County Jail. There's been one vote in the Minnesota Senate on funding for the Winona County Jail. That was last week, $750,000 to assist with land acquisition for the Winona County Jail. I voted yes on the bonding bill. As I mentioned earlier, it passed the Senate on a strong bipartisan vote of 64-3. So not only did she say that I voted no on the Winona County Jail, there have been several letters to the editor that have said that I voted no. Again, complete lies. There was another letter that said I voted no on improvements to the Preston Veterans Home. Well, folks, there is no veterans home in Preston. So it's hard to vote against improvements to a building that doesn't exist. So another lie. But in the 2018 bonding bill, as I mentioned earlier, we did pass funding at the state level for a new veterans home. There's $10 million that's passed the state, awaiting federal funding on that. We're waiting for about $22 million from the federal government. Once that comes through, then construction on that new veterans home in Preston will begin. Finally, they said that I don't get results on local projects. Well, that's a tough one because we got Education Village done. We got the Lanesboro Dam. We got the Southeastern Minnesota Veterans Cemetery. We got funding for the new veterans home that I just mentioned. In the most recent bonding bill, water and sewer treatment upgrades in Caledonia and Lanesboro. $2 million for the Mississippi Riverfront Trail, $8.7 million for the Chatfield Center for the Arts, the land acquisition funding for the Winona County Jail, and several more road and bridge projects. So again, I just urge people, stay above the fray, focus on the facts. If you have any questions on a position that I have as a candidate or any other candidate, please ask that person. Please do your research. Some of this stuff is a simple Google search away, and you can find the facts. And otherwise, just make a phone call and ask, because it's not good for anyone, regardless of party affiliation, regardless of what level of office that you're running for. It's not good to lie and make false statements about people. Nobody wins. Nobody wins when we do that. So I'd encourage you to be respectful, work together. If you have a question, ask. Don't write a false statement in the newspaper or on social media. Just ask and get the truth. So it's been a great honor to listen and work together with the people of Winona, Houston, and Fillmore counties, and ask for people's support so we can continue working together to help make southeastern Minnesota an even better place to live, work, and raise a family.
Thank you, Senator Miller. Does anybody have specific questions for him that we could ask right now? And if you do, if you have something that you actually, oh, go ahead, Scott.
Morning, Senator Miller. Thank you for the support for HEAPR. It'll make a big difference at Winona State University, so we're grateful for that. Do you have hope that there could be a bipartisan consensus in the state on how we can keep making progress on closing the gaps in educational opportunity? We know that's a thing that's a challenge for Minnesota, something Minnesota's just a great, has a great history of education, but lately those gaps have been nationally among the worst, if not the worst. So is it possible for a bipartisan work together to help close those gaps?
Scott, thanks for the question. Good to see you this morning. One thing I didn't mention in my comments is the support that we've given to higher education over the years, and more funding for our colleges and universities, more funding for the state grant program, and of course, HEAPR, as you mentioned in the last bonding bill. When it comes to the education gap, I think that, yes, there is bipartisan concern, and I think there's an opportunity for bipartisan progress. Many times what we see in the legislature, at least in the state legislature, is the goal at the end of the day is oftentimes similar between Republicans and Democrats, and the fight's not always, or the battle's not always between Republicans and Democrats. Oftentimes it's metro versus rural as well. And I think at the end of the day, the goal is the same. Let's try to address that achievement gap. The path to get there might be a little bit different, but I am hoping that that Democrats and Republicans, metro, rural, can put their differences aside and try to come up with some bipartisan solutions. Minnesota has long led the nation in education, and you're correct that achievement gap is getting worse in Minnesota. Another thing I think it's going to take, Scott, is a collaborative effort between our E12 schools and our higher education together with the legislature. So it's not only a bipartisan effort, but I think it's an effort amongst education experts as well as folks in the workforce to make sure that everybody's working together and trying to achieve the same goal. So that was a longer question, a longer answer to your question, but yes, I believe that there will be a focus on that.
Wonderful, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Senator Miller? Katie?
Morning, Senator. I'm wondering if you were integral in bringing members of the Trump family to Winona, and if so, if you'd explain why.
I was not.
And do you condone or condemn Mr. Trump?
I agree with many of Mr. Trump's policies. I would disagree with many of President Trump's tweets.
Thank you, Senator Miller. Any other questions? Okay, does anybody have any more questions for the mayoral candidates?
I have one for Jeremy.
Sure.
Jeremy, what are you seeing for cuts in LGA funding through the next budget cycle, specifically for Winona? I mean, obviously you haven't drilled down into that, I would assume, but you know, on average, I've been hearing about 15 to 20% reduction in LGA statewide. Are you seeing something along those same lines, or what are you looking at there, would you say?
Scott, that's the first time I've heard that number, and I'm pretty
It's
involved.
speculation from local elected officials, speculation.
Okay.
So
first of all, so pre-COVID, the state of Minnesota had a $2 billion budget surplus. Post-COVID, we're looking at the latest projection was over $5 billion, projected budget deficit. I'm optimistic that things will improve. We'll see a forecast in November, end of November, and then the legislature will actually budget off of the forecast that comes out at the end of February. So I do believe that there's an opportunity to for our budget situation to improve. I think it's too early to say where our reductions going to be, if there are reductions. One of the things that I think that we need to do, and anytime there's a budget deficit, it's an opportunity to really go line by line through the state budget and look at all the state funded programs, all the state funded agencies, look at what's working and look at what's not working. And there's no doubt that difficult decisions are going to have to be made. And behind every program, there's a contingency of people. There's support behind those programs, but we are going to have to take a hard look at these different programs. And one of the areas that I think we need to look at is, before we start looking at making reductions in any core services, whether that's LGA or education or health and human services, we need to look at the growth of these state agencies, and the number of FTEs, full-time equivalents within these state agencies has grown astronomically over the years. And nobody likes to let people go. Nobody likes to make reductions in jobs. But at the same time, before we make any reductions to core services, I think we need to reevaluate what the size of some of these agencies are. Just for example, yesterday I was meeting with some constituents in Fillmore County. We were talking about the clean water legacy funding that passed in 2008. And the clean water department, the people that oversee the clean water legacy funds, there's 230 people in that office. 230 people. Now, when Minnesotans passed the legacy amendment in 2008, I think they meant for those dollars to be put to work across Minnesota, and not necessarily to build a bureaucracy in St. Paul. So I don't know what to expect as far as LGA, Scott. I've been one of the biggest advocates in the state legislature for LGA. I'll continue to fight for it. There may be some reductions, but at the same time, I hope the budget forecast improves and we can find other savings within the budget. Another important thing to note is, when we're looking at the state budget, every biennium there are automatic spending increases in some of the budget areas above the previous base budget. So one of the things that I'd like us to do is not only go line by line through the state budget and look at every program, but also go back to what is base funding and then what is needed above that. And base funding, so just for example, base funding for LGA would be no reductions. Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to get there, but I'm sure hoping we can get through this challenging time with as few base reductions as possible.
Thank you, Senator Miller. I did get one question in the chat for the mayoral candidates, if you guys wouldn't mind answering it. And anybody that needs to hop off is more than welcome to do so. The question was, both candidates talk about arts and outdoor vibrancy as well as downtown. How will you support and work for large businesses in those along the Highway 61 corridor? And Jovy, if you want to answer first, just to keep going with the way it was before.
Sure. That's a great question. And I guess to be honest, I haven't thought a lot about the Highway 61 corridor. While it is very relevant because that is our Great River Road and that's where people travel through. As far as supporting the businesses along outside of downtown, I still think that there needs to be just as much support and programs, hopefully through our Port Authority, access to loans and growth opportunity with particular financing. And then I would probably just go further in asking those businesses what they feel like they need. Because again, this is, it's a conversation that needs to continue to happen. And so if there are other ways that the city isn't already thinking of, or that I'm not already thinking about, that the city can be supportive of these businesses, I would like to know how, and work on ways to develop that.
Can you repeat the question, Amanda?
Absolutely. Let me pull it back up. It says, both candidates talk about arts and outdoor vibrancy as well as downtown. How will you support and work for large businesses in those along the Highway 61 corridor?
So if you read my questionnaire answers, one of the questions was specifically geared towards, downtown. And while the businesses downtown are important, we've talked about revitalization of downtown and reuse of buildings downtown, new startups downtown. We have to look at Winona as a whole. It is not just downtown. I have borrowed a theory from a couple people I've spoken with, but I think of Winona as a three-legged stool. And I use this frequently because I think it really resonates with anybody who lives in town, regardless of what your profession or your social ties are within Winona. We are a town of business or industry, and that would include education. Education is a unique business, but it's still business. It's creating talent, but also healthy lifestyle options, outdoor recreation opportunities. Those fall in line together. And then also arts and culture. We are that three-legged stool. If one of those falters, the other two will start to falter as well. If businesses move away, they're incentivized to move to other communities or whatever it might be, that will hurt our arts and culture segment. That will hurt our healthy lifestyle options, because what it's doing is it's reducing the tax base. If we don't have healthy lifestyle options for people, it doesn't make the town as attractive as what it could be. If we remove arts and culture from our community, or if that falters, funding drops for that, then again, people will not be as attracted to the area. One of the biggest things that I think any candidate is talking about right now locally is attracting, retaining talent. The college and university, the post-secondary education institutions here in our community, they bring in a lot of business to us. They also bring in a lot of talent to our area. I was one of those people. I came in for 4 years and left, went back home, ended up coming back because I love the community so much. But without one of those three segments, you will lose talent or not have the ability to attract it as easily. Many employers in town right now are looking for employees, and specifically skilled labor or talent. And regardless if it's a business on 61 or over on the east end in the, you know, business park over there, or downtown, all of these businesses have the same struggles. They still have to look at margin. They still have to look at labor rates. They have to look at taxation. The city can help in various ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be fiscal or financial subsidizing of businesses or startups. But what we can do is we can work collaboratively with the chamber, with Visit Winona, with nonprofits in our community. It's important that we do that, especially in a smaller town like this. We all know each other. We're all going to run into each other in Midtown at some point, or, you know, Hy-Vee or wherever. We're going to see each other. We work together on a daily basis, even though we might not know each other personally. We are sharing the same experience within our small community. So it's important that we help every business in our community, because it is an important part of not only the variety and the offerings for the citizens of our community, but it's also an important part of the tax base for Winona. Senator Miller talked about LGA funding. Winona is fairly insulated right now from budget deficits because of the development that's happening in our community right now. And that is crucial to make sure that we don't get into some serious trouble. As of right now, what they're looking at, from, again, what I've heard is around 15 to 20% reduction in LGA funding. But to be honest, the city has insulated itself because of these developments. And so being able to support current businesses, making sure that they're staffed appropriately, and then also working with the other entities within this community that work towards developing and maintaining business in our community. Those are important parts of what a mayor can do within Winona.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both for answering. It is 8:35, so I know a lot of people probably have to get on with their day. If people have any specific questions too, I can always connect you with the two candidates. We will, as Christy had mentioned at the beginning, have this recording up on our website. If you missed the beginning part, I know a couple people came in a little bit late, and we also will have the candidate questions and answers from other candidates as well on our website. I think today is what she said. So I would like to thank Senator Miller for being here, both of the mayoral candidates, and all the people that joined us with amazing questions. So everybody have a lovely Friday and be well.